Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Do we want to give people a few more minutes, or do we?
Yeah, we're just starting the line.
All right, how are you?
Good morning. We are going to give folks just a couple of minutes to get started. So anybody out in the hall, if you want to make your way in here, grab a seat. We'll get started here in just a minute or two. Thanks.
You got it okay? You got it okay? Would you have? So we landed at DCA at like, I don't know, 8:30 or something. Yeah, and the PF changed everything. And I was like, this who wants breakfast here?
And I normally don't.
All right, good morning. We are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for being here. My name is Stephanie Marsh. I'm the Director of Communications for Mayor Malik in the city of Akron. We're happy to welcome you here today to the Osaseck Building Auditorium for the first press conference of the Malik administration. We have a few topics to go over here today. Before we get into it, I'd like to just introduce the folks who are up on stage with me. Obviously, to my left, I have Akron Mayor Shammas Malik. Next to him, I have Chief of Staff Britany Zinger. Next to her, I have Chief of Strategy Nanette Pitt. And on the end here, I have our Acting Police Chief Brian Harding. Today is just going to be the first of a series of press conferences we're going to do. We want to make this kind of a regular thing in the effort of transparency and staying connected to our media partners. So this will be happening more regularly. The other thing is we are going to do Q&A at the end. So I would just ask that you save your questions until the end. We will have plenty of time to go over everything that you want to know. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome up Mayor Malik to get us started.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. So, really appreciate Stephanie helping get this put together and everyone who's been involved from the administration side. We are, by my count, 25 days in. It's going to get harder to count once we get to February, but it's going well so far, and really appreciate the folks all across the board, from the cabinet all the way through all of city government, who have helped make this transition smooth and who have helped us work to address day-to-day city challenges like snow plowing, and also start tackling some of those longer-term challenges that we're going to be working on, including safety, education, and more. So we have a couple announcements here for you today, and then we'll be glad to take your questions. The first is that we are opening up the application process for the new police chief. So that process is now live on the Ralph Anderson and Associates website. There's a digital recruitment brochure, and we're asking folks to apply by March 4th, I believe is the date. Folks are required to have a minimum of 10 years of command or management experience within law enforcement, and there are a number of other requirements in the process there, but the brochure will be available on akronohio.gov. You can take a look at the brochure. As you know, we have had a robust community engagement process prior to the start of this. We have had a town hall at Garfield, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, and we had about 80 people at that town hall. We have a community survey that has been issued in English, Spanish, Arabic, and Nepali. That community survey remains open. We are still collecting responses and are going to use that feedback as we go through the process of interviewing and whittling down the list of candidates. That's also available on akronohio.gov, and we're going to continue to share that, especially with the populations that we translated it into other languages, to make sure that not only are we translating it, but that we're actually doing some of that outreach to make sure that we get the survey out and get feedback back. So that is the first piece. And then as we go through that process, as we close the applications, we are then going to narrow down to a list of finalists, and then we are going to have at least 2 opportunities for the public to engage with the finalists in a town hall format, similar to what happened previously several years ago during the search for Chief Milet. Those opportunities will be in person and virtual. So we'll have multiple opportunities for folks to engage and for community stakeholders to provide feedback as well. The second thing we're announcing today is a new policy change that has been made to ensure that our uniformed police officers are wearing name badges. So as many of you know, this was suspended during the summer of 2022 due to concerns about threats against our police officers. At this point, we want to make sure that we are reinstating the opportunity for our uniform officers to wear name tags. This was actually a decision that Chief Milet made before he left at the end of the year and instituted as policy. We are making sure that because there's been about a year and a half, we want to make sure all our officers have their name badges, and so we're going through a process of making sure that those are being ordered. Some of them have arrived. We're waiting for some of the rest of them to be arrived, so we expect that everyone will be in compliance by March 1st with this policy. But ultimately, it's really important to me, especially as I go out and talk to residents, it's important that if you reach out and say, "Hi, I'm Shammas, what's your name?" that you don't feel like you're doing something wrong as you're doing that. And so it's important, I think, as we're trying to build trust and build relationships, that people have an opportunity to get to know the officers. And I want to be clear, where there are threats and where there are things that cross a line, that we are going to make sure that those are investigated and folks are held accountable for that. But at the end of the day, we have to balance the need to have community policing and build relationships against the safety concerns that are there. And I think that was a safety concern for a particular moment in time, and we now need to kind of get back to the normal, regular order of doing things. So those are the 2 announcements we have on the safety side. I'd invite Chief Harding up to offer comments on those, and then we'll move forward.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity. Yes, our officers are aware of the change that would happen since July of 2022. We knew from the beginning we would come back to name tags. That is back. The majority of our officers are currently in compliance with that. The issue we had was specifically around some, they've always had ID numbers on their exterior carriers. Now they're going to be instituting their names on that. Our officers still introduce themselves. We're aware one of our primary focuses in the police department is community outreach, community engagement, and continuing to develop that close bond with our citizens and with the community. And this is a step in that direction. So our officers are eager to continue to engage as we look to serve our community in that regard. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. You can go. I'll introduce our Chief of Staff, Britany Zinger, to speak about 2 HR policies. Britt?
Good morning. So we are pleased to expand on our parental leave policy here in the city. So currently, the current parental leave policy offers 6 weeks of paid administrative leave on the birth of an employee's biological child or placement of a child for adoption. And so right now, currently you have to have been employed with the city for a year. And so with this expansion, we are reducing that time period to 30 days, which will allow more people to take advantage of this program and also value the time that employees get to spend and care and bond with their newborn child. So we are reducing that time period from 1 year to 30 days. Secondly, we are reaffirming the city's commitment to anti-discrimination and harassment. So back in 2016, the former administration issued 2 executive orders around EEO and anti-discrimination, anti-harassment. Later on today, we will be issuing a new executive order updating that, actually combining those two things because they really do flow together. We're also clarifying some of the protected class statuses that are listed there, including pregnancy and parental status and gender expression. And we're also taking some time to really explore and define a little bit further what conduct constitutes harassment, like slurs and negative stereotyping, threatening and intimidating or hostile acts, or written or graphic material that denigrates or shows hostility. So that policy is just kind of reaffirming, again, the city's commitment to anti-discrimination and EEO, and we thought we'd do that by kind of combining those policies. So I'll be available if there's questions later.
Thank you, Britt. I just wanted to make one comment on those policies, which is yesterday we did see the state legislature override Governor DeWine's veto of the ban on certain health care for transgender youth. And, this is not responsive to that, but it's obviously a related subject. And wanted to just state very clearly from my perspective and the perspective of this administration, what a negative step that is for the legislature to take. Ultimately, we have to make sure that we are protecting young people who are dealing with challenges and trying to get the health care they need. And I think the way in which the legislature has approached this issue has been, frankly, bullying. And is really harmful and action that is counterproductive to helping protect and advance the interests of all residents in the state, but particularly trans residents of the state. And so we are going to continue to push here locally to make sure that this is a welcoming community. This is a city that has passed a civil rights ordinance and established a civil rights commission that has sought to make sure that health care for trans employees is something that's protected and covered, and so we are going to work to continue that effort. But ultimately, this is a step back for Ohio, and it's an example of the legislature going after people often for political points, and so I don't think that's helpful, and I want to speak out against it. So next, I think we are going to, next we are going to talk a little bit about the capital budget. So this week we introduced our 2024 proposed capital budget to City Council. We presented the first half of that, and we'll present the second half of that to Council next week. So this is a lot of our infrastructure needs for the city, a lot of focus on roads and on public services and facilities, and really excited about some of the highlights of this. I think we are making significant investments and needed investments both in our city facilities, our public right-of-way and roads, sidewalks, and streets, in some of the buildings and environments that our city staff use, particularly our police department and our service employees who help plow snow and help keep our streets clean. Some much needed recognition that everybody deserves a strong and supportive work environment. And then also fiscal responsibility with the lowest budgeted amount of new debt for projects in a capital budget since 2018. So those are all things that I'm proud of. We're going to continue talking about this with council in the upcoming weeks, and the goal will be to pass this, I think, at the February 12th council meeting. But to go into some more details of this, we'll bring up our Chief of Strategy, Nanette Pitt.
Hello. We are investing in public safety in this current capital budget. We're allocating $1 million to replace 25 cruisers for the Akron Police Department and $950,000 for a new fire engine truck. We're increasing the body-worn camera program by $130,500, bringing the total investment to $375,000 for this year. This increase will cover approximately 37 new body-worn cameras for the SWAT team and the SNUD unit, as well as a new docking station. We'll be addressing the work environment in the Stubbs Justice Center with a number of building improvements at a cost of $220,000. This will include relocating and expanding the Akron Police Department's gym facility. Another highlight of this budget is that we'll be addressing speeding in our neighborhoods. This has been a long time concern of our residents and a critical issue for daily life. With that in mind, we have increased the 2024 budget for traffic calming devices from $200,000 to $500,000. This funding will cover piloting permanent speed tables, electronic signage, and other interventions to curb speeding. We will also in this budget be realigning the resurfacing program. For 2024, we'll be resurfacing a total of 70 centerline miles of pavement, which includes 50 miles of carryover from the 2023 program. By doing this, we hope that in 2025, we plan that we'll begin afresh so that when folk hear that their street will be resurfaced, it will happen in that current year going forward from 2025 onwards as we catch up this year. This will allow us to prioritize fiscal responsibility. As a result of the savings, we will be able to have $11.7 million in general obligation debt paid off, the lowest number budgeted for debt since 2018. That 11.7 million is the lowest since 2018 that we'll be incurring this year, down from over $26 million budgeted in 2023. That is a significant saving for the city. We will also, though, this year be expanding our sidewalk program. We've allocated $1 million for the city's sidewalk program, so we get caught up again on the backlog of requests. We'll be continuing work on the water and sewer projects. The North Side Interceptor Tunnel project is continuing with some major milestones this year, and the city will complete the excavations necessary for the structure, for the construction, including the beginning and ending shafts of that tunnel. We will also be rebuilding our community centers. We are committed to the existing plans to renovate and rebuild our community centers. We are investing in recreation and parks. This budget includes a dedicated $300,000 line item for the Akron parks. And we will also be elevating housing and community services. This year we've added $150,000 to pilot a program for the construction of tiny homes in our community to benefit our residents who are unhoused. We will increase support for our community development corporations from $300,000 to $500,000. There are many other highlights, but these are a few. I'll hand back to the mayor or, yep, okay.
Yep. So finally, before taking questions, I just want to highlight one fun thing. I got it right here. So we unveiled, and I have to give the previous administration credit for developing the new Akron 311 app. So if you haven't downloaded it, you can download it here. It's Akron 311 in the App Store, both iOS and Android. And I think we're pretty excited about what we've seen so far. We've had more than 1,800 downloads. We have 336 service requests entered through the app and 2,400 accounts created. I think I'm at least 2 of them so far. But this is going to be really important as we seek to make our service request process more efficient. Oftentimes, requests come in over the phone or through email, or people reach out to council members. We want to streamline and make this as effective as possible, and getting things online is one way of doing it, so there's a tangible record of it, and so then we can start to provide some of that back-end support, the response, showing people when a pothole is going to be filled, when a work order has been placed, things like that. We don't have all that functionality built in now, but this is one step to get us closer to that. And one example of that actually came yesterday. I was at an event at the Akron Art Museum and ran into a friend of mine. Her name's Pam Valentine. And Pam said during this recent snowstorm that someone called her because they thought she could get to the mayor and said, "Can we make sure that my street is plowed?" And Pam said, "You need to go get the app." And that's exactly what we want folks to do to start, right? If there's a persistent issue that isn't getting handled, absolutely reach out to the administration, reach out to your council member, but we don't necessarily need to have that be the first stop, because it shouldn't necessarily be who you know to get service or how quickly you can get in touch with one of us via text, right? It's not efficient for the city, and it's also not fair to residents who aren't as connected. And so this is something we're going to continue to blast out. If you haven't downloaded the app, please download the app, Akron 311. We're going to continue to talk about this and other ways of making our city more modern, more efficient as we get in here well into the 21st century. So with that, that's all that we wanted to cover this morning. We'd love to take your questions. Derek?
So since the news of SUMA's possible acquisition by HATCO, we've heard some concerns coming out of the community. Do you share those concerns at all?
I think that anytime there's change, especially with an institution that's so important, that there are definitely legitimate concerns. And Nanette, Britt, and I found out about the news, I believe it was Monday night, either Monday night or Tuesday night last week, and talked with SUMA about it and asked some difficult questions. And the statement that I put out the next day, last Wednesday, was a statement of support for SUMA as an institution and saying we're going to engage with all the questions that our community has and that we have as we get to know this new organization, HATCO, and then go through this due diligence process that SUMA is going through. So the other thing that, as I've been thinking about this over the past few days, I've kind of gone back to thinking about is something that President Biden says frequently, which is don't judge me against the almighty, judge me against the alternative. And we have to look at what the alternatives realistically are, right? SUMA has been seeking partners for a number of years. They've been undergoing fiscal stress for, I think, really the last decade. And this is an institution that we need to be a vital asset for the community for the next 100 years. It's a place that has been really important for my family during really difficult moments in my family's life, and I think that's probably true for almost everyone here in the audience. And so I guess what I would say is that we're going to work with the SUMA board, SUMA leadership, SUMA employees, and community members to have conversations, look at whether we host conversations or whether we partner with conversations that are happening. We're looking forward to meeting with the folks at HATCO as soon as we possibly can. I think we're hoping as soon as next week. And we're going to be asking tough questions because there have been, statements made about a foundation, about other commitments. We want to make sure that those are things that are followed through on, and we get more clarity around that, and even just the details of a deal. But again, I would caution to jump to necessarily any kind of conclusions. Nonprofit healthcare is in some ways a misnomer in terms anyways, right? It's such a complicated and highly regulated institution that I don't know that there's a huge fundamental difference between nonprofit healthcare and the for-profit healthcare. But at the same time, I have concerns anytime someone's saying, entities that we don't know are coming in. I think my concern is less with the model and is more concerned with, they're talking about doing this for 20, 30, 40 years. Do they have the capitalization to undergo the next 10 years of stress and to get to a point where fundamentally we ultimately, for healthcare to be affordable, we need change at the national level. And so I kind of talked about a couple different pieces, but we're gonna continue to approach this head on. We're gonna have a lot of conversations with folks at every level. I've had conversations with SUMA employees and with community members who are concerned. So we're gonna have those conversations.
As it relates to the speed tables,
Yeah.
can you give us an idea of how, this might be for the chief as well, the effectiveness of those tables when you piloted them last year, and how will you determine how many that you're going to get this year, how many will be permanent versus the ones that can be picked up and moved, and which neighborhoods?
So this is a topic near and dear to my heart as a retired ward council person, and so my answer might be almost as long as the SUMA one. And so in 2020, the City Service Department, the City Office of Integrated Development, piloted locations in 2 locations on Shockalog and Edgewood in West Akron. And they put the 2 tables in sequence next to each other. And so it wasn't just you go over one, it was that you go over 2. And we found that from the data that was collected, and there's a survey and data analysis study that was done by Akron Metropolitan Area Transportation Study, AMATS, that shows how effective they were. They were significantly effective in reducing speed. The next year in 2021, the city purchased 30 tables that were then used for, I think, roughly 12 to 15 locations across the city. And so that was roughly 1 to 2 locations in every ward. And so those were also effective. But the thing about these temporary speed tables is that they require a crew to install them with 300 screws, and then in the fall, or the late fall, to then take them out. And to avoid issues with snowplows, to avoid issues with fire trucks. And so to me, this isn't sustainable. We had a service crew that was working basically season round to install them, and then by the time they finished installing, to take them out. And there was also the benefit to the residents is you got it on your street for a couple months, and then we got to go to another street, and it would take us decades to go through every street in even a ward. And so what we'd like to do is start piloting permanent ones. When we look at permanent ones, I think we're going to probably start with locations where we piloted it previously and seen that it's effective. We have those in every ward. And then I think we'd like to see where else in wards. We have data that we have from request forms that will show us where we should place them. But then the final point, and the reason why it's $500,000, is that it's not just about speed tables. There's a lot of locations, particularly more arterial roads, where speed tables are not feasible. So one thing we put in there is more digital speed indicator signs that show you how fast you're going, and sometimes you don't probably realize you're going 42 and a 25 until that thing pops up there and shows you. And so we've seen those are effective. Those also have a data reader in them, so they're capturing the speed, so we can tell, is this actually a problem on this street, or is this more anecdotal? And then the final thing is there are other options and other solutions that are more about how you impact the roadway. So can we have bump outs that narrow an intersection so that people can't fly through a stop sign, a four-way stop, or a speed light even, as I think we probably all see probably far too often. So those are some of the things we're going to be piloting. So the primary thing is going to be working on some permanent speed tables, and then from there it's going to be a number of other things that our service department and our Office of Integrated Development are going to work on. And then finally, we are going to be working with service and with fire on making sure that we do resolve those concerns around plows and around fire trucks. We don't want to create a significant burden on our fire and EMS, but we also want to make sure we address what has been a persistent neighborhood issue.
So how many permanent are
We don't have the number yet. Yeah. In the back.
Mayor, when you and I have talked before, you've talked about when recruiting for the police department, going into the schools and getting this homegrown investment in the community to make sure that the officers who are recruited want to stay here and they're invested in the community. Is that also a priority for you when you're looking for the new chief, maybe considering internal first before you consider anybody from out of the community?
Absolutely. So one of the things we did was we made sure that this is open to everyone. It's open to internal candidates. It's open to external candidates. And I think there's one candidate I think who's on this panel here. But ultimately, what we want is the best possible candidate, and that can take many forms. I want to point out another thing, which is that you don't necessarily have to be a captain or deputy chief in a police department to apply. Right? Under this language, a sergeant who has 10 years of experience at the sergeant level might be able to apply as well. And so we don't want to exclude folks. We want to be inclusive with who we're going to take in applications from, and then we will listen to the community as we present those finalists to the community and get community feedback. Just being very clear, one of the things that was spoken very clearly at that town hall at Garfield was a number of people expressing a preference for an internal candidate. And so we're taking that feedback in, but we don't want to prejudge what's on the community survey that we issued, that we haven't yet processed the results for that. And then even for the internal survey that we shared with the police department as well. So we're taking that feedback in, but right now we're casting the widest net, and then we'll go from there. You can follow up.
Just as a follow-up,
Yep.
Is there anything in particular that is resonating with you from these community surveys?
Well, we haven't processed the results of the surveys yet. We had the town hall. I think with the town hall was just how engaged people were, and I think how it really was a positive atmosphere at that conversation. It wasn't this negative kind of divisive thing. I think everyone realizes how important safety is and that we all have a role in it. And fundamentally, we all want, I think, a police department that's functioning and effective and transparent and accountable. So I was heartened by the conversation that was there, that it wasn't kind of divisive or tense in any way. But ultimately, the takeaway that I did have is there were a number of voices, including somebody in a Paw Patrol costume, who expressed the interest in having an internal candidate, and that was feedback that came out of it. In the back.
Yeah, so with the community policing thing, you said that putting the named badges on officers is one step or the first step
Yeah.
to go towards that. What else can we expect towards the effort towards the relationship with police and the people this year?
Yeah. So there's a number of things that we're doing. The first is that we are going to be in the process of reviewing our pursuit and vehicle chase policy. And that's something that has been ongoing from the previous administration and from Chief Milet. And we're actively reviewing that right now. And we will share an update when we have an update on that. We're going to be working with our police oversight board to make sure that they have rules that they can pass and that are clear what their authority is and what their authority isn't, and that they're able to operate in a constructive way. I've been meeting with a number of members of the board, and I believe Nanette was at the oversight board meeting last night, and I believe that we're going to have some progress on the rules piece. And I think also we're working with them as they work on hiring an auditor. So I think as they go forward, we've shared with them that if they would like support from our administration in terms of logistics of setting up an event or community engagement, that we are more than happy to help and assist in that work. And that we also want to make sure that there's a bridge between the police department and the board, and that it's not an adversarial relationship, which is never what it was intended to be. So that's another aspect of it. And then the third, and this, I talked about this at length at the town hall, and this is very important to me, that fundamentally we have to make sure that we have the officers and that we have the prioritization within the police department to make sure more officer time is spent on proactive things like foot patrols and bike patrols and on community walks, so that not all time is spent on the reactive, going from call to call to call to call in a rushed way. If you're able to take a couple minutes and really sit with somebody on their front porch and develop a relationship, that has benefits that redound way into the future. Whereas if you are in the back of your head, you really only have 30 seconds at this call before you have to rush to a call that might be even more essential, then you're not necessarily going to take that time and have that extra level of bedside manner that it takes to build a relationship, especially in a tense moment. And I've said this repeatedly, that in the work that I had as a ward council person with our community engagement team officers who don't have to respond to calls for service, they're able to build relationships and troubleshoot neighborhood issues before they bubble over into violence. So I've seen it in practice, and the goal over the longer term is going to be to make sure that every member of our patrol subdivision has our patrol bureau on our uniform subdivision has the opportunity and has time and space in their work to be able to do that proactive work. That's fundamentally what community policing is.
Mayor, you mentioned at the school board meeting Monday at support for universal pre-K. Can you talk a little bit about what that support from the city would look like?
I can, but I would be getting ahead of myself. I think there's a meeting this afternoon about it, and then I think we have another meeting, I believe, next week about it. So basically, to go back, before COVID, a number of organizations, United Way, Akron Public Schools, GAR Foundation, others were meeting around creating a universal pre-K initiative in our city. And so one thing that I talked about a lot during the campaign and then talked about during my extended transition was bringing those stakeholders back together. And so we've been having a number of conversations around what that would look like. There are a lot of different models. It was actually funny, something the governor was quizzing me when I met with him last fall about the different ways in which different communities fund this. Some do it on a countywide basis, some do it with a city focus, some do it based on different tax structures, some do it you have to have some form of public funding in it. We're at the front end of those discussions, so I'm not here to commit, and write the check right now. But ultimately, as we go into these conversations, especially around an APS levy, and I think going to the APS retreat this weekend, the APS board retreat, we want to make this high up on the priority. There's a couple of priorities. A new North High School is a priority. Making sure we have access to extracurriculars for all of our young people is a big opportunity and a big priority. But this is too. And so APS has signaled that they're moving in this direction too. They have in their plan for excellence a full day pre-K expansion, but we want to broaden the pie. So that's working with Head Start and Community Action. That's working with private providers who often do good work. APS is potentially going to be closing some school sites, and some of those probably could be private daycare sites, right? That's what Essex has been for a number of years, and so it makes sense for a private provider to take that over. So it's going to be a patchwork. It's not going to be like any one entity is going to plant a flag and be the sole provider of pre-K, but we are at the front end of those discussions. So it's again a priority, but we're going to continue to pursue it.
Do you have any kind of time frame for those discussions from the city standpoint?
I don't have an immediate time frame, but I would say that we are going to have to decide pretty soon here whether that's something that would be included as part of a levy, or if not, then what the funding mechanism and structure would be. So we can keep talking about it. I'm happy to continue to answer questions about it. One thing, and I would just take a step back, is one thing I want to note. We have our 100-day plan that we're hoping to unveil shortly here to all of you. And it includes, really all of these things. And some of them are at a very minute level of detail, and some of them are more macro things. But for all of them, we're going to show you kind of some of our action steps, and hopefully then, as we get closer to the 100-day mark, some of our longer-term goals. And so that's a commitment that we have, and we are, as we are 25 days in, kind of working through all of those pieces and making sure, are there things that we're actually a lot further along once we got in the door, or the things that really, are probably not 100-day priorities, but are maybe 300-day priorities. The one that I set that is remaining is the 6-month goal for announcing the final solution, or the permanent solution, I should say, for the police station. So that's something that we're working through. Derek?
How large of a role did the new 311 app play in the city's response to last weekend's storm?
So I think there's a couple things that happened with the city's response to the storm. First, I want to give a ton of credit to our service department and our public works. I think that this is an entity that has just gotten better year over year. It's something I saw during my time as a council person, and then it's something that I saw with the work that was done last week. I think then coupled with that was really good communication. And so, again, I give a lot of credit to our communications department and Stephanie Marsh in really making sure that we're getting out information proactively and telling people, look, we are going ahead and doing treatment. And if we get to a point where we need to do plowing in residentials, we will let you know. But in the meantime, if you have an issue, you can go to the app, or you can go online, or you can call 311. I mean, 311 was still operating as a phone service over the weekend as well. And so, and I know because I called and just double checked and then hung up. So I probably shouldn't have done that. But in any case, I think that all of those things together helped. And then the final point that helped was we actually didn't have as much snow as we thought we might. And so we kind of got lucky. But I really, really want to highlight the work that our snowplow drivers and that everyone in Public Works does. We went over on, I think it was Friday actually, last Friday, over to the Public Works garage, and we're talking to some of the mechanics. And the work that folks do is not easy. They were actually taking one of those big salt spreaders off a truck. I mean, they just lifted the thing off the truck. They were like, it just rolls off. I was like, how does it rolls off? So I think we have really committed folks in the city, and we're going to be investing in making sure those folks are able to do their job.
What kind of
Sorry, let Derek follow up. Yep.
what kind of feedback, if any, have you received from the public regarding the city's response to this?
Am I allowed to say that it was positive? Because I think it was. Anecdotally, it was positive. I mean, I think that people appreciated the communication, but it's going to continue to be a work in progress. We're not going to say, "Oh, we did a good job on one storm, so we don't have to worry about the next one." Right? This is something. Again, as a ward council person, I very much understand the issue when you have heavier storms. When we get into a foot and a half, is going to be a significant challenge. And we're going to ask people to work with us. I mean, the reality is that, if you have a foot and a half or 2 feet of snow, it's going to take a couple of days to get into those residential streets, and people are going to have to be patient with us. So we're trying to show you that we are on it. We are on top of it. Again, communication is half the battle. And we're working on getting a snow map tracker so we can show you in real time what's been covered. We're still working through some of the tweaks on that and making sure the hardware is working. So you don't want to do a big thing badly, is a quote that sometimes people use. And so, we should have that pretty soon here for us. We're hoping to have it. We did test it out in this past storm. So we're continuing to work on that.
Ring Camera said that they're not going to allow police officers to request video from homeowners anymore. Is that still a program with Akron Police, and will that change the way they do things, or will it go away?
So I'm not aware of that announcement by Ring, but we'll look into it. And, it's something where, I think you have to have a balance. I think we've seen with council distributing Ring cameras that there is a significant benefit that homeowners feel safer. Often when I would go and knock on doors, often in neighborhoods that had significant safety issues, I would see a lot of Ring cameras because I think it adds a level of safety and security that folks feel. Now, whether they want to voluntarily, and no one has ever mandated that we get footage from people. If people want to voluntarily share that, I don't know that necessarily Ring can stop that, right? I think they don't necessarily have to make it easier through their portal, but I don't know that they can stop it entirely. But again, I didn't see the announcement, so we'll look at that and then we'll evaluate it. But it has been something that's helpful, and again, I would say our camera program, and particularly the flock camera program, is something that there are plenty of concerns around. But the license plate readers with Flock have helped us solve a number of crimes and have helped locate people in a number of situations, I think, with either kidnapping or Amber Alerts. So, there's benefit too. We have to balance the benefit and the concern, and we'll continue to do that. Anybody else?
Just to clarify on the ID tag, police officers, you mentioned they have the opportunity to wear it. Is this are they mandated, or they just have the
Yeah, I think I might have misspoke. It is required of uniform officers, and that's very clear in the policy. And by March 1st, we expect everyone will be in compliance with that. It's not an option. Anybody else? Okay. Well, I think that's everything. I will turn it back over to Steph.
Thanks everybody for coming today. I do have a couple press releases that I will put out after this that have those policies that we've discussed, some more information. So as soon as I get back over to City Hall, I have those out for everybody. And if you have any follow-up questions after that, please reach out to press@akronohio.gov. Thanks so much. Have a good day.
I would touch base with Steph, but yeah, I'd be.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
It's 10:43. I don't know what your schedule is like. If you have time to do that now.
I think I do.
Good to see you.
This sci-fi, some.
Oh, thank you so much. Nice to meet you in person. We've emailed and all that. So cool. Thanks for coming to this.
What's the best way for me to keep up with the conversation about
You just follow along with our press releases. We're not going to have something to announce like soon. So
No, I just didn't know the mayor said a meeting. I think we can just check next week if there were ongoing